Welcome back, everyone, to the Divine Frequency Online podcast. You know we love to do these deep dives. And today we're diving into the world of mental health and resilience.
Oh, it's such a fascinating topic, isn't it?
It is. And we've got two really great sources to help us explore this topic.
Oh,
We have a documentary from DW. It's called Mental Health and Resilience, The Secrets of Inner Strength.
I've heard good things about that one.
Yeah. And we also have Sarah's personal story, My Journey with Anxiety, Real Stories of Resilience.
It's so powerful to hear these personal accounts,
Yeah, yes. And, between these two sources, we're going to be learning about how our brains respond to stress.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll learn some practical tools for how to navigate anxiety.
Yeah, because who doesn't have that?
Right. And we'll even get into how positive experiences can actually change your genes.
Whoa.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff.
Wow. It's amazing how much we're learning about how powerful the human spirit is and its ability to just overcome challenges. And these sources really highlight that resilience isn't something reserved for just a select few.
Right.
It's something we can all work on and cultivate.
Exactly. And it feels so relevant these days. It seems like everyone is just stressed out and on overload.
Mm-hmm.
I know I had those moments where I'm just I feel like I'm drowning
Oh, yeah.
in to-dos and worries and everything. The documentary actually says that stress-related illnesses,
Mm.
they're impacting 1 billion people globally,
Wow.
which is wild. And that number's just rising.
That is pretty wild and a staggering statistic. And,
Mhm.
it really underscores why understanding resilience is so crucial.
Right.
And it's not about just becoming immune to stress.
Yeah.
It's about developing the skills and mindset to navigate that stress effectively.
Right. So you're not going to escape it, but
Yeah.
you can learn to navigate it.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about what exactly we mean by resilience.
Yeah. Good idea.
So the documentary features Professor Raphael Kalish, who is a neuroscientist. He's doing some really cool research in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his findings really surprised me. It's not just major life events that can impact our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It's the buildup of all those tiny daily stresses, too.
Yeah, it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
Yeah.
Each of those small stressors might seem insignificant on their own,
Right.
but over time they just build up.
Yeah, they add up.
Yeah. And Kellish's research suggests that those minor stresses, when we experience them frequently, can actually contribute to mental health issues,
Wow.
just as much as one big traumatic event.
That makes so much sense. Have you ever noticed how those everyday hassles, I don't know, traffic or deadlines, or even just a really long to-do list, can impact your mood?
Oh, absolutely.
It's so easy to just underestimate how much they affect us.
It really is. But the encouraging thing is that Kalish also found that people who approach those challenges with optimism and self-belief,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to be more resilient. So our mindset plays a huge role in how we cope with stress.
Yeah. Okay, so believing in yourself and your ability to handle tough situations can actually make a difference.
It really can.
I love that.
It's great.
It's such a good reminder to be kind to ourselves and remember that we have gotten through things in the past.
Exactly. We've done it before. We can do it
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
Mhm.
And we love to dive deep into the science here on the Divine Frequency Online podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the documentary really takes us right into the lab
Uh-huh.
with a Professor Marianne Mueller,
Okay.
who is studying resilience in mice. Her experiment is fascinating.
Really?
She basically wants to see, what does resilient behavior actually look like
Oh, interesting.
in a controlled setting.
Okay.
So they put these little brown mice
Okay.
in a cage with a much larger, more aggressive white mouse.
Oh my gosh. Poor little brown mice.
Talk about a stressful situation.
Yeah.
And they repeated this scenario for 10 days
Mhm.
just to observe how those mice would react.
I'm on the edge of my seat. What did they find?
Okay, so here's the surprising part.
Mm.
The most resilient mice weren't the ones that just fearlessly charged at the bigger mouse.
Okay.
Instead, they were more discerning.
Okay.
They had learned from their previous encounters
Oh, wow.
and adapted their behavior accordingly so they understood the threat,
Mm-hmm.
but they responded strategically rather than just ignoring it or getting overwhelmed by it.
So true resilience isn't about just being fearless.
Right.
It's about learning from our experiences and knowing when to fight and when to adapt.
Right. It's about choosing your battles.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've looked at the psychological side of resilience,
Right.
but the documentary also dives into the biological factors. This is where things get really interesting.
Ooh, I love the biology part.
Me too. So they highlight the work of Elizabeth Binder,
Okay.
who studies the role of genes
Okay.
in resilience.
Sure.
And specifically, she's focused on the FKBP5 gene,
Okay.
which plays a key role in regulating our stress response.
Wait, hold on. How do genes affect our ability to handle stress?
Right. So it all comes down to how our bodies manage the stress hormone cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
So when we experience stress, our brains trigger the release of cortisol,
Okay.
which helps us cope with the challenge.
Mm.
But for some people, due to variations in this FKBP5 gene,
Okay.
it takes longer for their cortisol levels to return to normal
Oh, wow.
after a stressful event.
So some people might feel like they're kind of stuck in that state of high alert
Right.
long after the stressor has actually passed.
Exactly.
It must be so draining.
It is. And this research is so significant because it opens up the possibility of developing personalized therapies
Oh, interesting.
that target these variations
Oh, wow.
and help people regulate their stress response more effectively.
That is incredible. I just imagine being able to tailor treatments to an individual's genetic makeup. That feels like the future of healthcare.
Right. If you are interested in learning more about this, be sure to check out etherealenergeticvibes.com. They have a wealth of information on these topics. Now, the documentary also delves into the impact of early childhood experiences
Oh, yeah.
on resilience. And we meet Boris Cyrulnik, who is a renowned psychiatrist,
Mm.
and he's a pioneer in resilience research.
Wow.
And his story is so moving. He lost almost his entire family during the Holocaust
Oh, my goodness.
and had to navigate such unimaginable trauma.
That's heartbreaking. It's amazing that he was able to not only survive, but to go on to help other people.
Right. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And one of his key findings is the impact of a mother's stress on a child's developing brain,
Really?
even before birth.
So a mother's stress during pregnancy can actually affect the baby's brain development.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating and a little bit scary.
It is. It really highlights how interconnected we are,
Yeah.
even from the very beginning.
That's true.
And it shows how important it is to support mothers and families
Mhm.
during those early years.
It really does take a village to raise a child.
Exactly. And to create a more resilient society.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of cutting-edge research, the documentary introduces us to Elizabeth Binder again. She's using this technique called brain organoids.
Brain organoids.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
No. Tell me more.
They're essentially like mini lab-grown versions of the human brain.
Wow.
And it allows researchers to study the effects of stress on brain cells, but in a controlled environment.
That is wild.
And what Binder's research is showing is that exposure to high levels of cortisol, the stress hormone,
Right.
can actually alter the physical structure of the developing brain.
Wow. So it's not just like a temporary thing. It
Right.
can have long-term impacts.
It really drives home the importance of creating nurturing and supportive environments
Yes.
for young children, especially during those critical early years.
It makes you think about the impact of our own childhoods
Right.
and how they might have shaped us.
Exactly. And this leads us into the fascinating world of epigenetics,
Epigenetics.
which is the study of how our environment and experiences can actually change the way our genes work.
Wait, our environment can change our genes. I thought our genes were just what we inherited.
Right. That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
But that's where the research of Katharina Domska comes in. She studies a process called methylation,
Okay.
which basically acts like a little cap on our genes,
Okay.
influencing whether they're turned on or off.
So it's like a dimmer switch for our genes.
Yeah,
That is amazing.
it is. And what Domschik found is that positive experiences can actually increase methylation of certain genes, potentially boosting resilience.
So our experiences, both good and bad, can literally change the way our genes express themselves.
Yeah.
That is incredible. It really highlights how much power we have
Right.
to shape our own well-being.
Even at a genetic level.
That's so cool.
Right.
Now, let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and explore some practical tools for building resilience based on the latest research. The documentary features psychologist Michelle Wessa,
Okay.
who studies learned helplessness.
I've definitely felt that way before.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, nothing changes.
Oh, absolutely. And she uses this powerful analogy that an elephant chained to a small peg.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Yeah, so a baby elephant is tethered to this peg, and he tries with all his might to break free, but he can't. And then as he grows bigger and stronger, he could easily break that chain,
Right.
But he doesn't even try.
Because he doesn't think he can.
Exactly, because he's learned to believe he's helpless.
That's heartbreaking. But it also makes you realize how much our beliefs about ourselves can hold us back.
Absolutely, yeah. And Wes's research shows that we can retrain our brains to break free from those limiting beliefs.
I love that. Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, one of her key points is that while we can't always control the stressors in our lives,
Right.
we can control our reactions to them.
Right, that's empowering.
It is. And this is where those practical exercises that she teaches come in.
Okay, so it's all about shifting our focus from what we can't control to what we can.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, what are some of those techniques that she recommends?
Well, one really simple yet effective strategy is focusing on small successes.
Okay.
Because we tend to dwell on our failures, right?
Yeah.
But if we take the time to acknowledge and celebrate our accomplishments, no matter how small, it can boost our self-efficacy and resilience.
Okay, so it's like giving ourselves permission to feel good about our progress.
Yeah,
Even if it's baby steps.
exactly. Recognizing those little wins along the way.
I love that. Okay, so now let's turn to Sarah's personal story.
Okay.
Shared in the account, My Journey with Anxiety. Sarah's experience with generalized anxiety disorder
Okay.
is a really good reminder that you're not alone if you are struggling with anxiety. Millions of people around the world are facing similar challenges.
It's so true.
And her story is so relatable. She talks about how everyday tasks that most people just take for granted, like going to the grocery store
Yeah.
or going to social events, felt completely overwhelming for her.
Right.
And I can definitely relate to that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Like sometimes even simple things can feel daunting
Yeah.
when anxiety takes over.
Yeah. It's important to remember that anxiety is a spectrum, right?
Right.
What feels manageable for one person might be debilitating for another.
Right. There's no right or wrong way to experience it.
Exactly. And that's what makes Sarah's story so powerful. Despite her struggles with anxiety, she found a path to healing and a healthier mental state.
So how did she do it?
Well, she developed what she calls her resilience toolkit.
I love that.
Yeah, which includes mindfulness practices,
Okay.
cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT,
Okay.
journaling, and physical activity.
Okay. I'm definitely intrigued to unpack these in more detail.
Absolutely, me too.
But first, I want to remind our listeners about a fantastic resource if you are interested in exploring mental and emotional well-being. It is etherealenergeticvibes.com.
Oh, yes. A wonderful resource for anyone who's on that journey to greater well-being.
All right, so let's dive back into Sarah's resilience toolkit and explore those tools that helped her manage her anxiety.
Okay, sounds good.
So one of the first things she tried was mindfulness meditation.
Okay.
And she started with guided meditation apps, just like dedicating like 10 minutes a day
Okay.
to just sit quietly
Right.
and focus on her breath.
Yeah.
And over time, that simple practice really helped her to ground herself during moments of intense anxiety.
It's amazing how powerful those simple practices can be.
Right. So mindfulness is all about like bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many people talk about the benefits of mindfulness, but like, how does it actually work to combat anxiety?
Well, it helps interrupt those anxious thought spirals.
Okay.
That can kind of take us down a rabbit hole of worry. Right. Yeah.
So by focusing on the present moment,
Yeah.
whether it's your breath, your senses, your body, you can create a sense of calm
Right.
and detach from those racing thoughts.
Okay. So it's like you're hitting the pause button on your mind
Exactly.
and giving yourself a much needed break.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. What about CBT? How did that fit into Sarah's journey?
So CBT is a type of therapy that focuses on identifying and challenging negative thought patterns.
Okay.
It's based on the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected.
Oh, so if you can change your thoughts, you can change how you feel and behave.
Exactly, yes. It's a very powerful concept.
Okay, so through CBT, Sarah learned to recognize those negative thoughts that were contributing to her anxiety
Okay.
and develop strategies to replace them with more like balanced and constructive ones.
That must have been so empowering for her
Right.
to be able to take control of those thoughts.
Instead of just letting them run wild,
Exactly.
she learned to like challenge them.
Yeah. Choose a more positive perspective.
And it helped her reduce her anxiety levels significantly.
Wow. Okay. Now, another tool that Sarah found incredibly helpful was journaling.
Oh, journaling can be such a great outlet.
It can. It's like having a conversation with yourself on paper.
Yeah.
How did Sarah use journaling to manage her anxiety?
She used it as a safe space to express her feelings without judgment.
Okay.
She would reflect on her triggers
Hmm.
and note moments of gratitude
Okay.
and just allow herself to process whatever she was going through.
Yeah, I love the idea of journaling as a tool for self-discovery and healing.
Me too. It's very powerful.
Like giving yourself permission to just be completely honest and vulnerable with yourself.
Exactly.
Now, finally, Sarah emphasizes the importance of physical activity.
Oh, yeah.
She found that incorporating regular exercise into her routine helped her to manage her stress levels
Okay.
and improve her overall mood.
Exercise is such a powerful tool for both physical and mental health.
It is.
It releases endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects.
And it helps us regulate our stress response and improve sleep quality,
Right.
which are both essential for managing anxiety.
It's like a natural antidepressant.
It really is.
And the best part is, you don't have to become a marathon runner to reap the benefits.
No, you don't.
Even just a brisk walk or some gentle yoga can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Just get moving.
Exactly. It's about finding something you enjoy
Yeah.
and making it a regular part of your routine.
Yeah.
Sarah's story is such a beautiful example of how we can build resilience and live a fulfilling life, even while facing challenges.
Yeah.
And her toolkit provides some really practical strategies that anyone can try.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on to the next section,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from our listeners.
Oh, yeah. What are some of your anxiety triggers?
Yeah. And what coping strategies have you found helpful?
Yes, we would love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Remember, sharing our stories and strategies can be so powerful because it helps us feel less alone.
And it reminds us that we have the strength to navigate these challenges. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, please don't hesitate to reach out for support.
Yeah, good point.
There are so many resources available, from therapy to support groups to online communities.
Absolutely. And speaking of resources,
Yes?
I want to remind you once again about etherealenergeticvibes.com.
Yes.
It's a wonderful online hub that's filled with insightful articles, guided meditations, and practical tips for managing stress and anxiety.
Yeah, it's a wonderful resource.
It is. Stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll explore even more fascinating insights into the world of mental health and resilience. Welcome back to the Divine Frequency Online podcast. As we continue our deep dive into mental health and resilience, I want to highlight a key point that the documentary makes. Resilience isn't about striving for constant happiness or avoiding difficult emotions.
Okay.
It's more about navigating the ups and downs of life
Right.
with a sense of groundedness and flexibility.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. Life throws curveballs, and it's about like learning to ride those waves. And, the documentary showcases some amazing individuals who have demonstrated just incredible resilience in the face of adversity. And one that really stands out is Jorg Ballman, who tragically lost his son, Luca.
Yeah, wow. His story is such a powerful example of finding meaning and purpose amidst profound grief.
Yeah.
Initially, he felt paralyzed by the loss,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom that depth of pain.
Right.
But he didn't let it consume him. He co-founded the Faustlos Foundation.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, with the parents of Freddie, who was Luca's friend, who also passed away in the accident.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the Faustlos Foundation.
Yeah.
Is that like a violence prevention program?
Yes, it is. It's an inspiring example of transforming tragedy into something positive.
Yeah.
And so it's a violence prevention program, and it begins in kindergarten,
Wow.
teaching children essential skills for peaceful conflict resolution.
It's just incredible how they channeled their grief into a mission that could potentially impact countless lives
It really is.
and create a more peaceful world.
It's amazing. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, we can make a difference.
Yeah, and speaking of making a difference, let's shift our focus to another key aspect of resilience,
Okay.
the ability to regulate our emotions. So the documentary highlights the importance of understanding our emotional triggers and developing those healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah, and one of the researchers featured is Michelle Wessa,
Mm-hmm.
who studies learned helplessness.
Right.
And she's all about those practical strategies for building resilience.
Mhm.
And Wessa emphasizes that we can't always control what happens to us, but
Right.
we can control our reactions.
I love that. It puts us back in the driver's seat.
Exactly. One technique that she teaches is the power of focusing on small successes.
Okay.
Because oftentimes we get so caught up in what we haven't accomplished.
Right.
But by acknowledging even those small wins,
It can boost our self-esteem and motivation.
it's like those small victories throughout the day that kind of add up
Exactly.
to something bigger.
Simple but effective.
Yeah.
And another helpful technique is reframing negative experiences.
Okay.
So instead of viewing those setbacks as failures,
Mm-hmm.
we can choose to see them as opportunities for learning and growth.
Right. It's about like turning those lemons into lemonade, not letting the setbacks define us, but
Exactly.
use them to fuel our growth.
Okay.
I've always admired people who can maintain that positive outlook.
Yeah, well, it's not a superpower.
Okay.
It's a skill that we can all develop with practice.
Right.
Finally, Wesso encourages us to stay active,
Yeah.
even when we're feeling discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to give up when things get tough.
It is.
But taking action, even if it's in small steps, helps us maintain momentum
Right.
and build resilience over time. It's like, just keep swimming, you know? Even when you feel like you're treading water, every little stroke brings us closer to shore. Now, before we move on, let's address this common question I think a lot of people have.
Okay. What's that?
Does being resilient mean we have to be superhuman? Like, never feel overwhelmed?
Oh, that's a good question. And the answer is absolutely not. Resilience isn't about denying our emotions.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging our feelings, both positive and negative, and developing healthy coping mechanisms to navigate those challenges.
So it's about being human, with all of our imperfections and our vulnerabilities, recognizing that it's okay to ask for help when we need it.
Yes. And in fact, reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so circling back to the personal account, My Journey with Anxiety,
Yeah.
Sarah's story offers some really practical tools that listeners can use
Yeah.
to manage their anxiety and build resilience. So one tool that she highlights is mindfulness. She started with guided meditation apps just 10 minutes a day to sit quietly and focus on her breathing. And over time, this helped her to become more aware of her thoughts and feelings without judgment.
So mindfulness is about being present and cultivating that sense of acceptance for whatever arises.
Yeah, it's about creating that pause button for your mind,
Exactly.
observing your thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
Yes, and that pause can be so powerful
It can.
because it gives us that space to choose how we want to respond
Right.
rather than just reacting impulsively.
Right. Okay, so another tool that Sarah found helpful was cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Right. So CBT focuses on identifying and challenging those negative thought patterns. It's based on the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected.
Okay, so if you can change your thoughts, you can change how you feel and behave.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very powerful concept.
It is. Okay, so through CBT, Sarah learned strategies for interrupting those unhelpful thought patterns and replacing them with more balanced and realistic ones.
It's like rewiring our brains for greater peace and well-being.
Wow. Okay, now journaling was another key component of Sarah's resilience toolkit.
Oh, journaling is so great. It provides a safe space to just express your thoughts and feelings without judgment,
Yeah.
allowing for self-reflection and processing those emotions.
So how did she use it?
So she used it to reflect on her triggers,
Okay.
note moments of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
and to just kind of shift her perspective over time.
It's like having a conversation with yourself,
It really is.
exploring your thoughts and feelings in a safe, non-judgmental way.
Absolutely.
Okay, and finally, Sarah emphasizes the importance of physical activity
Yes.
for managing anxiety and building resilience.
It's so important. Exercise releases endorphins, which are those natural mood boosters, and it helps us regulate our stress response and improve our sleep quality,
Right.
which are both essential for mental well-being.
Yeah, it's like a natural antidepressant. You don't have to become a marathon runner to reap the benefits.
You really don't.
Even a brisk walk or some gentle yoga can make a big difference.
It really can. Just get moving.
Yeah. So Sarah's story is just a beautiful example of how we can build resilience and live a fulfilling life,
It is.
even while facing challenges.
Yeah, and her toolkit provides some really practical strategies that anyone can try.
Yeah. What stands out to you from her story and her resilience toolkit?
What stands out to me is her emphasis on self-care and the importance of finding what works for you. Resilience isn't a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
Experimenting with different tools and strategies can help us manage stress and cultivate well-being in a way that feels right for us.
Yeah, it's a personalized approach.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up this segment, I want to leave you with an empowering thought. Resilience is not a destination.
Okay.
It's a journey.
I love that. It's an ongoing process of learning, growing, and adapting to life's ever-changing circumstances.
Exactly. And the good news is we can all cultivate greater resilience one step at a time.
Absolutely. And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
There are so many resources available. Don't hesitate to reach out to a trusted friend, family member, therapist,
Right.
or organizations that are dedicated to mental health and well-being.
Yes, and if you're seeking inspiration and guidance, check out etherealenergeticvibes.com.
Yes, it's a treasure trove of resources.
It is. To support you on your path to a more resilient and fulfilling life. Stay tuned for part 3 of this deep dive,
Yes.
where we'll explore even more fascinating insights into the world of mental health and resilience. So what's fascinating is that the documentary takes a closer look at some inspiring real-life examples of resilience.
Yeah, one story that particularly resonated with me was that of Celine and Bjorn Wilk,
Okay.
who are a couple who experienced a devastating loss.
Okay.
They tragically lost their son Freddie in the same train accident that claimed the life of Jorg Ballman's son Luca.
Oh, wow. It's hard to even comprehend the immense grief that they must have endured.
Yeah, it's unimaginable. To lose a child is every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And yet their story highlights the incredible strength and resilience of the human spirit.
It does. So despite their profound sorrow, Celine and Bjorn, along with Jorg, chose to transform their pain into a force for good.
They did.
They co-founded the Faustlos Foundation, a program designed to prevent violence
Yes.
and promote peaceful conflict resolution.
Wow, that's truly remarkable. To turn such unimaginable heartbreak into a mission that could potentially save lives
Right.
and create a more peaceful world is just incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, their story underscores the power of finding meaning and purpose in the face of adversity.
It really does.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times,
Yeah.
we have that capacity to create something positive
Absolutely.
and make a difference in the world.
And their story also highlights the importance of community
Yes.
and connection during times of hardship.
Right.
So by coming together and sharing their grief, they were able to find strength and support in one another.
Absolutely. The human connection is such a vital part of resilience. We're not meant to go through life's challenges alone.
We're not.
Having that supportive network of friends, family, or even a community
Yeah.
that makes such a big difference in our ability to cope and heal.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, a burden shared is a burden halved.
Right.
Sometimes simply having someone to listen to us and validate our feelings can be incredibly healing.
It can. Okay, so now shifting gears a bit, let's revisit some of the practical tools and strategies for building resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The documentary highlights the importance of understanding the science behind stress
Okay.
and how it affects our minds and bodies.
Right. It's not just about willpower or toughing it out.
Right.
There's an actual biological basis for how we respond to stress.
Okay.
And so the documentary explains the concept of the HPA axis,
Okay.
which stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's a very complex system that regulates our stress response.
Okay.
And so when we perceive a threat, our brains signal the hypothalamus, which then triggers a cascade of hormonal changes,
Okay.
ultimately leading to the release of cortisol.
Cortisol, the infamous stress hormone.
Exactly. It gives us that fight or flight response.
Right.
And cortisol is essential for helping us cope with stressful situations.
Okay.
It provides a burst of energy and focus so we can address the threat.
Mm-hmm.
However, if cortisol levels remain elevated for prolonged periods, it can have negative consequences for our physical and mental health.
Right. Chronic stress is no joke. It can lead to all sorts of health problems.
It really can. And so the documentary emphasizes the importance of finding healthy ways to manage our stress response.
Okay.
So techniques like mindfulness, deep breathing, and exercise can help regulate those cortisol levels
Right.
and bring our bodies back into balance.
I've definitely noticed a difference in how I feel when I prioritize those things. Taking time for self-care, even if it's just for a few minutes each day, can really help to reduce those stress levels.
It really can. It's so important. And remember, everyone's stress response is different. Okay.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
It's about finding what strategies help you feel more grounded and centered.
Right. It's about experimenting and creating your own personalized toolkit.
Exactly. Now, speaking of resources,
Yeah.
I want to remind our listeners about etherealenergeticvibes.com.
Yes.
It's a fantastic website with tons of information on stress management, mindfulness, and overall well-being. If you're looking for practical tips and guidance on your resilience journey,
Yes.
be sure to check it out.
It's a wonderful resource.
Mm.
Okay, so let's turn back to the documentary and explore one final story that beautifully illustrates the power of resilience. And it's the story of a woman named Maya,
Okay.
who, as a young child, fled her war-torn country with her family.
Oh, wow. Maya's story is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit,
Yeah.
especially in the face of unimaginable trauma.
Imagine being forced to leave everything you know and love behind.
Your home, your friends, your entire life, and flee to a foreign land with nothing but the clothes on your back.
It's a heartbreaking reality for so many refugees around the world.
Yeah.
And yet, Maya's story is not just about loss and displacement.
Okay.
It's about hope,
Mm-hmm.
resilience, and the incredible capacity of the human spirit to overcome adversity.
I'm eager to hear more about her journey. So what happened after she fled her home country?
Well, life was far from easy for Maya and her family. They faced numerous challenges.
Yeah.
Language barriers, cultural differences, financial struggles, and just the constant fear of being sent back.
It must have been so difficult to navigate such a new and unfamiliar environment.
It was, and yet Maya's story highlights the transformative power of education and community support.
Mm.
With the help of dedicated teachers and mentors, she was able to learn the language,
Wow.
excel in school, and eventually pursue higher education.
Wow, that's amazing. Education can be such a powerful tool
You can.
for empowerment and social mobility.
Absolutely, and Maya's story doesn't end there. She went on to become a successful professional and a passionate advocate for refugees and immigrants.
Wow, so her story is a beautiful reminder that resilience is not just about surviving.
Oh.
It's about thriving. It's about using our experiences, even the painful ones, to create a better life for ourselves and others.
Absolutely, and it's about recognizing that we all have that potential for resilience within us,
Yes.
no matter what challenges we face.
I love that. It's such a message of hope and empowerment. So before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to pose a question to our listeners. What's one thing you've overcome in your life that has made you feel more resilient?
Yeah, take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. What challenges have you faced? What lessons have you learned?
Yeah.
And how have those experiences shaped you into the person you are today?
And remember, sharing our stories can be such a powerful way to connect with others and inspire hope. Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our exploration of mental health and resilience with some final insights and takeaways. Welcome back to the Divine Frequency Online podcast. As we wrap up this deep dive into mental health and resilience, I'm really struck by how much we've learned.
Me too, from the research and just those personal stories.
Yeah, it's amazing how they complement each other.
Totally. The science gives us that fascinating insight into the mechanisms of resilience, and then the personal stories show us how it actually plays out in real life, you know?
Yeah, and one of the biggest takeaways for me is realizing that resilience isn't about being superhuman or never going through hard times.
Right.
It's more about learning to navigate challenges with grace and strength.
Absolutely. And, you know, the documentary and Sarah's story really highlight that it's okay to struggle, to feel overwhelmed, and to ask for help.
Yeah.
And actually, those are often the moments when our resilience is truly tested.
And strengthened.
Right.
Yeah. It's about embracing like the full spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and everything in between.
And knowing that we have those inner resources to navigate it all.
Exactly. Speaking of resources, I want to remind our listeners about etherealenergeticvibes.com.
Such a great website.
It is filled with inspiring content and practical tools for cultivating greater well-being. Be sure to check it out.
It's a treasure trove of information and support.
It is. So before we wrap up, let's revisit some key takeaways
Yeah, good idea.
that our listeners can start using today. One of the most powerful tools we talked about was mindfulness.
Yes.
Remember Sarah's experience,
Mhm.
just 10 minutes a day.
Made such a big difference for her.
It did, in her ability to manage anxiety and just stay present. Mindfulness is such a simple yet profound practice.
It is cultivating that awareness of our thoughts and feelings and sensations without judgment.
Right, exactly. It's like creating a space between ourselves and our reactions.
Yeah.
So we can choose how we respond rather than just being ruled by our emotions.
Absolutely. Another powerful strategy that we talked about was reframing.
Yes.
Instead of looking at challenges as setbacks or failures, we can choose to see them as opportunities for growth and learning.
Right. It's about shifting our perspective
Yeah.
and focusing on that potential for positive change.
It's like turning lemons into lemonade.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean we deny the difficulty, but we choose to look for the silver lining and the lessons that we can learn.
Yeah. Love that. And let's not forget the importance of self-care.
So important.
Taking time for activities that nourish our minds, our bodies,
Yeah.
our souls
Yes.
is essential for building resilience.
It is. Whether it's spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, pursuing those creative endeavors, or simply just engaging in activities that bring us joy, self-care is not a luxury.
No,
It's a necessity.
it is. It's about replenishing our energy and nurturing our well-being
Yeah.
so we can show up fully for ourselves and for others.
Absolutely. Now, as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay, I love it.
What small step can you take today to cultivate more resilience in your own life?
Yeah, maybe it's committing to 5 minutes of mindfulness each day, or reaching out to a friend, or just simply acknowledging one thing you're grateful for.
Those small things can make such a big difference.
They can. And remember, even small actions, when we do them consistently, can have a ripple effect and create a more resilient and fulfilling life.
Couldn't agree more. And if you're feeling inspired to continue exploring this topic, make sure to visit etherealenergeticvibes.com for a wealth of resources and support.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the heart of resilience. We hope you've gained some valuable insights,
Yeah.
practical tools to help you navigate life's challenges,
With greater strength and grace.
and a sense of hope.
And thank you for listening to the Divine Frequency Online podcast.